Hi, ArcFieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday morning, June 28th. It looks like generally a break in the action in the Mid-Atlantic region over the next couple of days. There certainly can be some scattered afternoon showers and thunderstorms today, especially, let's say, east central Pennsylvania up across New York City into New York State. But for the most part, the next couple of days will be rain-free in much of the Mid-Atlantic region. Now, the overall weather pattern becomes unsettled again by the time we get to late Friday night time frame. It looks like a couple of frontal systems will come into the Mid-Atlantic region and tend to hang around for a few days, and that'll keep the weather unsettled again with a renewed chance of showers and thunderstorms on Saturday, Sunday, likely Monday and Tuesday as well. Let's take a quick look at the sea surface temperature anomalies here before we get into the continental U.S. weather forecast for the next several days. First of all, two big features here we've been talking about, and they certainly remain. One is El Nino off the west coast of South America across the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean. This is an area of above normal sea surface temperatures, especially warmer than normal just off the west coast of South America, and this certainly will have an impact on the tropical season, not only in the Atlantic Basin this coming summer, but also in the Pacific Ocean as well. Also, notice here off the west coast of Africa, quite a bit warmer than normal conditions here, really warmer than normal into the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico, right in this region right here. So these are kind of contradictory signals for the Atlantic Basin tropical activity. Warmer than normal sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic Ocean are, of course, favorable for tropical storm development and intensification, but El Nino in the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean tends to be an unfavorable factor for Atlantic Basin tropical activity because it tends to increase winds in the breeding grounds of the tropical Atlantic, and in other words, wind shear, and that wind shear tends to inhibit the intensification of a tropical activity. In fact, with these past couple of systems here, they developed, Brett and Cindy tended to develop in the very warm waters of the eastern part of the Atlantic Ocean, then moved into this area, and indeed there was some like wind shear, I guess, from the El Nino conditions in the Pacific Ocean that contributed to the weakening phase of both Tropical Storm Brett and Tropical Storm Cindy. Cindy, by the way, still kind of hangs around, and it could hang around long enough to move north to the Canadian Maritime provinces, but it's not a strong system by any means. Also, there was some dry air over the Caribbean Sea that really came all the way from northern Africa, the Saharan desert area. There was an air mass that traveled to the west from the east in the trade winds, and really was kind of concentrated over the Caribbean Sea, and that too, in addition to the wind shear, helped to weaken both Brett and Cindy. Well, let's take a look at the nationwide radar loop. This is from Weather Underground, WSI's and Telecast.com. First of all, kind of a break in the action in the Mid-Atlantic region. Certainly there can be a few showers and thunderstorms that pop up later this afternoon up across, let's say, east central Pennsylvania, maybe places like Allentown, north and east into the New York City metro region, maybe all the way into northeastern PA and southern New York. But DC should be rain-free, and probably Philadelphia should be rain-free today, and certainly tonight and tomorrow look to be generally rain-free. Philadelphia, DC, New York City. There are some showers and thunderstorms out across the central part of the nation. Certainly some of these right here over the northern Mississippi Valley can turn into some strong to severe thunderstorms later today going into tonight. Not atypical for this time of the year. It's rather dry out in the southwestern states, and looks like it'll be dry there, which is typical for this time of the year out across, let's say, Southern California and Arizona over the next 5 or 10 days or so. Well, let's use last night's Canadian model run to take a look at the potential weather for the next several days across the nation. First of all, here we're looking at the ensemble run at 0Z, Canadian ensemble run, and we're looking at 5-day averages of 500 millibar height anomalies here. This is the current 5-day period, and you see some orange here, some higher than normal heights across the south central states. Generally kind of a weak flow, and overall kind of a block, kind of a pattern here with a weak flow from west to east. A little bit of a ridging here over the south central states, and certainly more intense high pressure ridging, higher heights than normal up across Canada. We'll move forward here, and similar situation. Not all that extreme one way or another, kind of a weak flow here. This is all the way out days 7 to 11. We're now already with this forecast into the month of July. Notice July 4th to July 9th. Generally a weak, kind of a typical pattern for the summertime across the nation. We'll go out a little bit farther in time, and here we go all the way out days 10 to 14. This is July 7th, July 12th. Much the same, maybe hot and dry over Texas, kind of a weak flow from west to east across the northern states going into the first and second week of the month of July. Well, this is the forecast map from the operational version of the Canadian model from Zero Z last night. The forecast map for total precipitation next 10 days. And as we said earlier, pretty typical this time of the year to see absolutely dry conditions across Arizona, southern part of California, southern part of Nevada. So this is rather typical. Still some decent rainfall amounts across the eastern third of the nation. There's kind of a break in the action for much of the eastern U.S. over the next couple of days. It gets unsettled again Friday, and it looks like that unsettled pattern across the Mid-Atlantic, across the Carolinas, the southeast U.S. Will continue Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Kind of hit or miss type thunderstorms in those days from Friday through the early part of next week. Nonetheless, some decent rainfall amounts over the next 10 days as projected here by the Zero Z run of the Canadian. That's in the eastern part of the U.S. And Mexico gets hit pretty hard with some rainfall here. And we'll have to watch the Gulf of Mexico when we get into the early part of July. There are some signs that there could be some tropical activity developing in the Gulf of Mexico, let's say the first or second week in the month of July, and that certainly could have an impact on rainfall amounts in the southern and eastern states as we go through the month of July. Well, let's wrap up by looking at the surface forecast maps from the Zero Z Canadian model. There's a frontal system now off the east coast, and it will become a little bit less humid, noticeably less humid in places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City later today and especially tonight. Those dew points will tend to lower. The winds will kind of pick up out of the west to northwest later today. Certainly less humid than it's been over the past few days in the Mid-Atlantic region on the backside of that frontal system. And again, kind of a break in the action. Certainly tonight and tomorrow with rain-free in the Mid-Atlantic region. But then we get into the day on Friday. Notice some rainfall showing up over the Midwest early Friday morning. And there'll be a couple of frontal systems that head in this direction. And the overall pattern certainly will become a little bit more unsettled Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday as well in the eastern part of the nation, with weak frontal systems tending to hang around. And notice a lot of rainfall over the higher terrain of Mexico. This is now going all the way into the early part of July here. We're at July 3rd, which is next week, the early part of next week, and still kind of an unsettled weather pattern in the eastern U.S. So again, a break in the action in the Mid-Atlantic region over the next, let's say, 48 hours or so. Then gets unsettled again Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. Tropical activity looks quite limited in the Atlantic Basin over the next few days. Again, the remnants of Cindy could hang around for a few days and go north as a weak system into the Canadian Maritimes, but really nothing too significant. We'll watch the Gulf of Mexico as we get into the month of July. That's it for now for ArcFieldWeather.com. This has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.